Hey, Mason Ross.
And Nick Lucas.
Today we're going to talk to you a little bit about soil sampling. The thoughts that we share today are strictly of our own opinion. The topic of soil sampling has really been a trend in the last few years. Nick, would you share with us a little bit of why it's the importance of soil sampling, especially in the last few years with the increases in yield and production?
Yeah, so to me, soil sampling is important because it gives us a starting point to analyze where we're at from a nutritional need at the soil level. So when I think back over the last couple years and what seems to be the trend moving into the 2018 harvest is extremely high yields. And when I think about high yields, it's depleting nutrients out of our soil. So most people on a pretty standard fertility program, and my concern and why I would encourage growers, especially over the next year or two, to really start pulling soil samples is because those high yields have depleted our soil. It takes more nutrients to make more yield, right?
That's right.
And so over the last couple of years, we've definitely depleted our bank of nutrients at the soil level.
Nick, I know there's various ways as far as going about taking samples within a field and whatnot, but if you could you explain to us kind of the standard practice as far as pulling an individual sample?
Yeah, so first off, Mason, I'll mention that there's most probes a 6-inch mark, and when we pull a soil sample, we want to make sure that we're pulling at least 6 inches of soil, and the importance of that is because most of our roots are going to live in that 6-inch line of soil. So once I do that, I'll pull at least 20 to 25 core samples across the field so we have a good representation. We're going to send them off to the lab and see what the results say when they come back.
Could you kind of explain the difference between a composite sample versus a grid and even into a zone sampling process?
Yeah, Mason. So when I think about, this is a 40-acre field behind us, and if I'm going to pull a composite sample, I'm going to work my way across pulling soil samples across this entire 40 acres. When I get into grid sampling, my preference is 2.5-acre grids. I'll pull samples within each 2.5-acre grid across this entire 40-acre field. And so when I think about zone sampling, there are several ways that we can split zones out into a field, whether it be soil type, yield mapping, various other ways. But I'll pull my samples based off those different zones that we create in that field.
So now that we've shared a little bit of the insights and basics of soil sampling, we would really recommend getting out in the field as quick as possible and really being able to get that jump start going into the next growing season with your fertility plans.
That's great advice, Mason. And folks, be sure to get in touch with your local Greenpoint representative or your local cooperative representative if you have any questions about soil sampling moving into this fall. And always, like us on Facebook, follow us on Twitter.